I'm Sylvia Matthews, 59 years old, retired English teacher from Boston. For 30-plus years, I've hosted our family Christmas in my colonial home, cooking feasts and making memories. My son Thomas moved to Chicago with his wife Amanda 7 years ago, but they always fly back for my holiday gatherings. Last month, Thomas called with news. "Mom, this year we're bringing Amanda's family too. It's just 12 people." I smiled into the phone. "Perfect. I'm traveling. You handle it. I'm not your maid." Before I continue my story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever reached your breaking point with family expectations. Let's talk about my holiday rebellion. The string of white lights that adorned my front porch had been the same for 15 years. Every December 1st, I would carefully unwind them from their storage box, check each bulb, and hang them with precision along the eaves of my modest colonial home in Lexington, Massachusetts. This house had seen 32 Christmases under my care, each one meticulously planned and executed. I stood on the porch now in early November, staring at that empty spot where the lights would soon go, wondering if this year would finally be different. My name is Sylvia Matthews, and before retirement, I taught high school English for 35 years. Literature and language were my passion, but my true artistry emerged during the holidays. From the perfectly roasted turkey to the handcrafted ornaments, I transformed our home into a winter wonderland that made everyone feel the magic of Christmas. For most of those years, my husband Frank had been my cheerful assistant. He would handle the heavy lifting, the outdoor decorations, and entertaining the men with football and his famous eggnog, while I orchestrated the culinary symphony in the kitchen. Frank passed away from a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, just 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Despite my grief, I still hosted that year. The family needed normalcy, I told myself. They needed me to keep our traditions alive. "Mom always makes it work," my son Thomas would say proudly to his friends, and later to his wife Amanda. And I did. Every year I made it work. Thomas was my only child, born when I was 30, after years of struggling with fertility. Perhaps that's why I poured so much into creating perfect holidays for him, wanting to give him the magical childhood I dreamed of providing. Even after he grew up, I maintained the tradition, expanding it to include his college friends, then his girlfriend Amanda, and eventually her family, when they married 7 years ago. Shortly after their wedding, Thomas and Amanda moved to Chicago for their careers. He worked in financial technology, while she pursued a position at a prestigious marketing firm. The distance was difficult for me, especially after losing Frank, but I understood their need to build their own lives. Still, Christmas remained sacred. No matter what, they flew back to Massachusetts for the holidays, staying in Thomas's old room and participating in our family traditions. What began as intimate gatherings for 3 had gradually expanded over the years. Last Christmas, I hosted 9 people myself: Thomas and Amanda, her parents Gerald and Janet Wilson, Amanda's sister Brittany, and her husband Paul, plus Amanda's brother Kevin and his girlfriend Zoe. My modest 3-bedroom home was stretched to capacity. The dining room table had to be extended with a folding table borrowed from my neighbor, and sleeping arrangements required creative solutions involving air mattresses in the living room. Though I never complained, the physical toll of preparing for these gatherings had become increasingly difficult. At 59, my energy wasn't what it used to be. My arthritis flared up after long days of cooking and cleaning. The financial burden of feeding so many people had also grown substantial on my teacher's pension. Last year's Christmas remained vivid in my memory. I had been up since 5 in the morning preparing the turkey and side dishes. By the time everyone sat down to eat at 2 in the afternoon, I was already exhausted. While the family laughed and enjoyed the food, I made countless trips between the dining room and kitchen, serving refreshing drinks and clearing plates. After dinner, I overheard Thomas in the living room, his voice carrying as he spoke to Amanda's father. "Mom lives for this stuff," he said confidently. "She'd be lost without her holiday hosting duties." Something about that comment stuck with me long after the decorations were packed away. Did I live for this? Or had I simply never considered an alternative? Throughout the year, I began to notice how one-sided our family communications had become. Thomas called regularly, but rarely asked about my life beyond superficial questions. Our conversations centered on his work challenges, their city apartment renovation, and Amanda's family news. When I mentioned my book club or my new watercolor painting class, he would listen politely before steering the conversation back to his concerns. As summer turned to fall, I joined a travel group for seniors at my local community center. Martha, a vivacious widow in her 60s, had just returned from a Mediterranean cruise and couldn't stop talking about the experience. "It was liberating," she told me during our coffee chat. "No cooking, no cleaning, just enjoying myself for once." The seed was planted, though I didn't recognize it at the time. When Thomas called in early October to discuss Christmas plans, I automatically began making mental notes: what time their flight would arrive, which bedroom to prepare for Amanda's parents, what new recipes to try. It was our normal planning conversation until he casually mentioned bringing additional guests. "By the way, Mom," he said, as if an afterthought, "Amanda's brother Kevin got engaged to Zoe, so they'll both be coming. And her youngest sister Tiffany is back from her study abroad program, so she'll join us too with her new boyfriend Sam." I did a quick mental calculation. 11 people. My small house was already bursting with 9 last year. "Thomas, I'm not sure we have the space," I began carefully. "We'll make it work," he replied dismissively. "We always do." That night, I found myself unable to sleep, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the work ahead. The cooking for 11 people, the cleaning before and after, the shopping, the decorating, the coordination of bathroom schedules, the mediation of family tensions that inevitably arose. All while Thomas and Amanda enjoyed their holiday break, treating my home like a fully staffed hotel. I began to wonder, when was the last time I had enjoyed Christmas? It was a crisp November morning when the conversation happened, the one that would change everything. I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, flipping through a magazine featuring exotic vacation destinations. Martha had lent it to me after our last lunch together. "You should really consider traveling, Sylvia," she had said. "There's a whole world out there beyond family obligations." I had smiled non-committally, but found myself lingering over images of sandy beaches and historical European cities more than I expected. The idea of being somewhere else during the holidays felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Thomas's name flashed on the screen. "Good morning, sweetheart," I answered warmly. "Hey, Mom," he replied, his voice casual, distracted. I could hear the faint clicking of a keyboard in the background. He was probably working while calling me, multitasking as usual. "Just checking in about Christmas plans. We need to book flights soon." "I've been thinking about that," I said. "Last year was pretty crowded with 9 people. I'm not sure how comfortable everyone will be this year with 11. There was a pause in the typing sounds. "Actually, Mom, it's going to be 12 people now." My heart sank. 12? "Yeah, Amanda's parents asked if her grandmother could join too. She's getting older and they don't want to leave her alone for the holidays. But it's just one more person, no big deal, right?" I closed the travel magazine, pressing my hand against its glossy cover. "Thomas, my house isn't getting any bigger. Where would everyone sleep?" "We'll figure it out," he said breezily. "Maybe some people can stay at that hotel near you. But they'd still come for the meals and everything, of course." "And I'd be cooking for 12 people, I clarified. "Well, yeah. But it's just 12 people, Mom. You've handled bigger gatherings before." I thought back to those bigger gatherings he referenced. Yes, when Frank was alive, and we hosted his large extended family, we sometimes had 20 people. But Frank had been there to help, and we were both younger then. Plus, we had hired catering help for those occasions, something Thomas seemed to have forgotten. Besides, Thomas continued his typing, resuming in the background, "Amanda's mom said she'd help with some side dishes." I remembered Janet's help from last year, a store-bought pie that remained mostly untouched, and her standing in my kitchen making conversation while I did all the work. "What time is your flight getting in?" Thomas asked, clearly assuming the matter was settled. Something shifted inside me in that moment. A lifetime of acquiescence transformed into an unfamiliar feeling, rebellion. I don't think I'll be here, I heard myself say. The typing stopped abruptly. What do you mean? I mean, I'm thinking of traveling this Christmas. A stunned silence followed. Traveling where with whom? I'm not sure yet, I said, surprised by my own calmness. But I've been wanting to try something different. Something different? Thomas repeated, his voice rising slightly. Mom, Christmas at your house is our tradition. Everyone is counting on it. I felt a flicker of guilt, then pushed it aside. Thomas, I've hosted Christmas for over 30 years. I'm tired. Planning, shopping, cooking, cleaning for 12 people is a lot of work. We can help out, he offered, but we both knew that hadn't happened in past years beyond token efforts. No, I said firmly. I think it's time for someone else to take over the hosting duties. But Mom, our house in Chicago isn't big enough for everyone. That sounds like a planning problem, not my problem, I replied, surprising myself with my directness. What are you saying? Thomas asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and irritation. I took a deep breath and said the words that had been building inside me for months, maybe years. I'm saying that when you said, it's just 12 people, I realized something. It's not just 12 people to me. It's 12 people to cook for, clean, for shop for, and accommodate. What's just to you is exhausting to me. So yes, perfect. I'm traveling this Christmas. You handle it. I'm not your maid. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom, you can't be serious. Thomas finally said, his voice now tinged with panic. Where would everyone go? What would we do? You're 30 years old, Thomas. Figure it out. Host at your place. Rent an Airbnb. Go to a restaurant. There are options. But I've made up my mind, I said, feeling a strange mix of guilt and liberation. I think it's time I had a Christmas for myself. Is this because Dad's gone? He asked softly, hitting my one vulnerable spot. Because we can talk about that. We all miss him, but this isn't about your father. I interrupted, though his mention of Frank did cause my chest to tighten. This is about me finally recognizing that I deserve a holiday too. I need to call you back, Thomas said abruptly. Amanda needs to hear this. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, my coffee growing cold. Had I really just done that? The house seemed unusually quiet, as if holding its breath. I walked through the rooms that would have been filled with guests, the living room where air mattresses would have been squeezed between furniture, the dining room that couldn't properly accommodate 12 people, my small kitchen where I would have spent countless hours preparing meals. For the first time, I imagined these spaces empty during Christmas. No chaos, no demands, just peace. The thought brought an unexpected smile to my face. My phone rang again within the hour. This time it was Amanda. Sylvia, she began, using my first name as she always did. Thomas told me about your travel ideas. We're a bit confused. Is everything okay? Her tone suggested that only some personal crisis could explain my deviation from the expected script. Everything is fine, Amanda. I've just decided to try something different this year. But Christmas at your house is our tradition, she protested, echoing Thomas's earlier words. Traditions can change, I replied, and sometimes they should. The conversation continued in circles with Amanda, attempting to figure out my real reason, unable to accept that my desire for a break was reason enough. By the end of our call, she had transitioned from concern to barely concealed frustration. Well, I guess I need to tell my family, she said coldly. They've already requested time off work to come to Massachusetts. The guilt surged again, but I stood firm. I'm sorry for any inconvenience, but my decision is made. After hanging up, I immediately called Martha. You did what? She exclaimed after I recounted the conversations. Then she laughed. Oh, Sylvia, good for you, it's about time. I feel terrible, I confessed. And liberated. Is that strange? Not at all, Martha assured me. That's exactly how setting boundaries feels at first. Trust me, it gets easier. With Martha's encouragement, I opened my laptop and began researching holiday travel options. A Christmas cruise to the Caribbean caught my eye, 10 days of sunshine ocean views, and not a single turkey to baste. Before I could second-guess myself, I entered my credit card information and booked it. Non-refundable. There was no turning back now. The next few days passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. One moment I felt elated at my decision, imagining myself lounging on a sun-drenched deck with a good book. The next moment, I was gripped by guilt so intense it made my stomach hurt. Had I destroyed our family's Christmas? Was I being selfish? What would Frank have thought I wandered through my house touching the familiar decorations still packed away in their boxes in the attic? I pulled out the photo album from when Thomas was small, his face alight with wonder, as he opened presents under our tree. Those were simpler times when Christmas meant watching his joy, rather than coordinating an event for a dozen people. My phone became a constant source of anxiety. Thomas called daily, his approach evolving from shock to bargaining to thinly veiled manipulation. "What if we hired someone to help with the cooking?" he suggested during one call. "It's not just about the cooking, Thomas." "Then what is it about? Help me understand," he pleaded. How could I explain that it was about 30 years of putting everyone else's needs before my own, about the slow erosion of my identity until I became simply Thomas's mother or the Christmas host, about watching my son become a man who expected women to handle domestic labor without appreciation? "I just need a break," I said instead. The calls weren't limited to Thomas. Amanda's mother, Janet, phoned next, her voice syrupy with forced understanding. "Sylvia, dear, I hear you're thinking of skipping Christmas this year." "Not skipping," I corrected, "just spending it differently." "Well, we're all quite concerned. Is there something going on with your health you haven't shared?" The implication was clear. Only illness could justify my abandonment of duty. When I assured her I was perfectly healthy, just in need of a change, her tone cooled noticeably. "I see," she said. "Well, this puts us all in quite a difficult position." Next came Amanda's sister Brittany, whom I'd always gotten along with well. She was more direct. "Honestly, Sylvia, everyone's freaking out. Christmas is like 6 weeks away. What are we supposed to do?" "The same thing I've done for 3 decades, I replied. "Figure it out." Even my sister-in-law Diane, Frank's younger sister, who lived in Vermont, called after apparently hearing the news from Thomas. "Is this about Frank?" she asked gently. "Why does everyone think this is about Frank?" I sighed. "Because you've been so dedicated to maintaining traditions since he passed. This seems like a radical departure." Perhaps she had a point. Had I been clinging to hosting duties as a way to keep Frank's memory alive? The thought gave me pause, but didn't change my decision. The only person who unequivocally supported me was Martha. We met for coffee at our usual spot downtown, and she listened as I unloaded my conflicted feelings. "Do you know what I keep thinking about?" I told her. "Last Christmas, after spending 14 hours cooking and serving, I had to clean the kitchen while everyone else watched a movie. No one offered to help. They just expected it." Martha nodded. "And that's exactly why you need this break." "But what if I'm ruining Christmas for everyone?" She took my hand across the table. "Sylvia, you're not responsible for everyone's Christmas joy. They're adults. They can create their own happiness." Martha's words stayed with me as I returned home to find 3 more missed calls from Thomas. Instead of calling him back immediately, I sat down at my computer and finalized my travel plans. I booked a pre-cruise hotel stay in Miami, arranged airport transportation, and even reserved some shore excursions. With each confirmation email that arrived in my inbox, my resolve strengthened. This was happening. I was really going to have a Christmas for myself. When I finally called Thomas back, I shared my confirmed itinerary. "So you're really doing this?" he said flatly. "Yes, I am. The cruise is non-refundable." A heavy silence followed. "I guess we'll have to cancel Christmas then," he said, his voice thick with disappointment. "That's your choice," I replied, feeling the sting of his attempt to make me responsible. "But you could also use this as an opportunity to start your own traditions." "In our tiny apartment with 12 people." You could get creative. Rent a place. Do a restaurant. Split up the hosting duties among multiple homes. It won't be the same, he insisted. No, I agreed. It won't be. But different doesn't mean worse. As November progressed, the pressure intensified. Thomas's calls became less frequent, but more emotional. During one particularly difficult conversation, his frustration boiled over. I don't understand how you can just abandon the family like this, he said accusingly. Abandon. I repeated, my own anger finally surfacing. Thomas, I've dedicated 30 Christmases to creating perfect holidays for you. I've spent thousands of hours cooking meals, wrapping presents, and making memories. Taking one Christmas for myself is not abandonment. But everyone was counting on coming to your house. And I was counting on retirement, meaning I could occasionally put myself first. I countered. Why is their disappointment more important than my exhaustion? He had no answer for that. The tension reached its peak when Thomas called one evening in late November. His voice was cold, distant. I just wanted to let you know that we've decided to cancel Christmas this year, he announced. Since you won't host and we can't accommodate everyone, we're just going to skip it. Amanda's family is pretty upset. The guilt was instant and overwhelming, exactly as he'd intended. Thomas. No, it's fine, he interrupted. You enjoy your cruise. We'll just see everyone after the holidays or something. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and cried for the first time since making my decision. Was I being punished for finally setting a boundary? Perhaps the cruelest realization was seeing how transactional our relationship had become. Without the service I provided, the hosting, the cooking, the creating of holiday magic, did my son even know how to relate to me? Had I raised him to be this way by never setting limits before I called Martha again? My voice shaking as I recounted the conversation. He's bluffing, she said confidently. He's trying to make you feel so guilty that you'll cancel your trip. Don't fall for it. But what if he's not? What if I've ruined Christmas for everyone? Then that's a consequence of his choices, not yours, Martha replied firmly. You offered alternatives. He's choosing the nuclear option to punish you. Don't accept that responsibility. Though still conflicted, I knew she was right. For too long, I had accepted responsibility for everyone else's happiness. It was time to stop. That night I wrote Thomas a long email. I explained that while I understood his disappointment, I was disappointed too. Disappointed that he couldn't see how much I needed this break, and that he would rather cancel Christmas entirely than adapt to a new situation. I suggested again that he consider alternatives, and I attached links to rental properties near Chicago that could accommodate large groups as well as restaurants that offered Christmas dinner packages. I'm not abandoning Christmas, I wrote in closing. I'm just changing how I celebrate it this year. I hope you'll choose to find joy in creating new traditions rather than mourning the temporary loss of old ones. I hit send before I could change my mind. The unexpected phone call came 3 days after I sent the email to Thomas. I was sorting through summer clothes to pack for my Caribbean cruise when my cell phone rang. I didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. Hello, Sylvia. This is Janet Wilson, Amanda's mother. I braced myself for another round of guilt tripping. Hello, Janet. I hope I'm not interrupting anything, she said, her tone surprisingly gentle. Not at all. Just some packing. There was a pause before she continued. I wanted to call you privately without Amanda or Thomas knowing. This was unexpected. Is everything okay? Yes, she assured me. I wanted to tell you something. After our last conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said about needing a break. I remained silent, waiting. The thing is, Janet continued, her voice dropping slightly as if sharing a secret, I understand completely. I've hosted our extended family for Thanksgiving for 25 years, and there are times I've dreamed of just booking a flight somewhere, anywhere, to escape the work of it all. I nearly dropped my phone in surprise. Janet had always seemed to relish her role as the perfect hostess, effortlessly managing large family gatherings with a smile. You have? I asked. God, yes, she laughed softly. especially since Gerald barely lifts a finger to help. He thinks opening wine bottles counts as participation. I found myself laughing with her, the tension between us dissolving. "I called because I want you to know that I support your decision," she said. "And I've been talking with Amanda and Thomas about alternatives." "You have—" My voice was thick with unexpected emotion. "Yes. I told them it's ridiculous to cancel Christmas just because they need to adapt. Adults adapt. That's what we do." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, Janet. That means a lot. I think this might be good for all of us, especially Thomas and Amanda. They need to learn these skills sometime, right?" We talked for nearly an hour. By the end, not only had Janet become an unexpected ally, but she shared that Amanda's sister Brittany had been asking for my stuffing recipe and tips on hosting large gatherings. "She admires you," Janet explained. "She wants to learn how you've managed it all these years." After saying goodbye to Janet, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Perhaps this change was creating ripples beyond my own experience. The next surprise came the following evening when I received a text from Amanda. "Can we come over this weekend? Thomas wants to talk in person." They arrived on Saturday afternoon, Thomas looking unusually somber and Amanda more subdued than her typically confident self. I welcomed them into the living room, where I'd already set out coffee and the pumpkin bread Thomas had loved since childhood. "Mom," Thomas began after an awkward silence, "I've been doing a lot of thinking since your email." I nodded, waiting. "I realized I don't even know how to cook a turkey," he admitted, a flush creeping up his neck. "Or how to plan a meal for more than 4 people. Or how to organize sleeping arrangements for a large group. Those are learned skills, Thomas. No one is born knowing them." "But I should have learned them by now," he said, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "Instead, I've just expected you to handle everything. Every year." Amanda placed her hand on his arm. "We both have." I felt tears threatening, but held them back. "Thank you for acknowledging that." "I've been unfair," Thomas continued. "I didn't see the work, because I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe you enjoyed doing everything than to recognize I should have been helping more." "We want to learn," Amanda added. "If you're still going on your cruise, which you absolutely should, we want to make Christmas happen. But we could use some guidance." The rest of their visit transformed into an impromptu hosting workshop. I pulled out my holiday planning binder, showing them my timelines, shopping lists, and recipes. Thomas asked thoughtful questions about cooking techniques, while Amanda took notes on a tablet. "How do you keep track of everyone's dietary restrictions?" she asked. "And how far in advance do you start preparing?" Thomas wanted to know. Their genuine interest touched me deeply. This wasn't just about salvaging Christmas, they were making an effort to understand the invisible labor I had performed for years. Before they left, Thomas hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I didn't mean what I said about canceling Christmas. I was just trying to make you feel guilty." "I know," I said, squeezing him back. "Do you still want me to host?" he asked, pulling away to look at me. "We've been looking at rental houses near us that could fit everyone." "I think that would be wonderful," I replied sincerely. As they were leaving, Amanda turned back. "Also, I called the cruise line. We upgraded your cabin to a balcony suite as an early Christmas present. You deserve it." I stood on the porch watching them drive away, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. There was still guilt about breaking tradition, still anxiety about how the holidays would unfold without me. But there was also pride in myself for holding my boundary, and in Thomas for his growth. For the first time, I felt genuine excitement about my upcoming trip. Over the next few weeks, a flurry of activity replaced the earlier tension. Thomas and Amanda secured a large rental house near their apartment in Chicago. Amanda's sisters created a shared document for coordinating menu items, with everyone contributing dishes. Janet volunteered to arrive early to help with preparations, and even Gerald promised to handle the turkey. I created a detailed hosting guide complete with recipes, timelines, and troubleshooting tips for common holiday disasters. I shared family traditions that could be adapted for their new setting: the Christmas Eve reading of A Visit from St. Nicholas, the cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning, the special ornaments I had collected over the years. Thomas and Amanda visited once more before the holidays this time to collect some of those special decorations to use in Chicago. As I carefully wrapped each ornament, I shared its history. "This one was from our first Christmas as a family," I told Thomas, handing him a small ceramic rocking horse with his birth year painted on the side. "And this angel your father bought the year before he died." Thomas handled each item with reverence. "Are you sure you want us to take these? They're so important to you." "That's why I want you to have them," I explained. "Christmas isn't about the place, it's about carrying traditions forward, even as they evolve." As December progressed, I finalized my own preparations. I bought new summer clothes for the cruise, put timers on my house lights, and arranged for my neighbor to collect my mail. The day before my departure, I received an unexpected delivery: a gift basket filled with cruise essentials, sunscreen, a new beach hat, a novel I'd been wanting to read, with a card signed by Thomas, Amanda, and surprisingly, all of Amanda's family. "Enjoy your well-deserved break," the card read. "We've got Christmas covered." That evening, Thomas arranged a video call so I could see their preparations at the rental house in Chicago. They proudly showed me the decorated tree, the dining table set for 12, and the kitchen where Thomas was already preparing dishes that could be made ahead. "I used your brine recipe for the turkey," he said proudly, showing me the large bird soaking in its mixture. "And Amanda's sister Tiffany made your cranberry relish." I could see my holiday binder open on the counter, its pages now marked with their own notes and adaptations. They had taken my traditions and begun making them their own. "It looks wonderful," I said truthfully, my heart full. "You're going to have a beautiful Christmas." As I prepared for bed that night, my suitcase packed and waiting by the door for my early morning departure, I realized something profound had shifted. The guilt that had plagued me for weeks had transformed into something else: pride. Pride in my son's growth, pride in the family's adaptability, and pride in myself for finally prioritizing my own needs after decades of putting them last. I picked up a framed photo of Frank that sat on my bedside table. "I think you'd be proud too," I whispered to his smiling face. Tomorrow I would board a plane to Miami, and then a cruise ship bound for the Caribbean. For the first time in over 30 years, I would experience a Christmas that didn't revolve around serving others. The thought no longer filled me with guilt, but with peaceful anticipation. The morning of December 23rd dawned bright and clear in Miami. I stood on the balcony of my hotel room, watching palm trees sway in the gentle breeze, still marveling at the contrast between this scenery and the snow-covered landscape I had left behind in Massachusetts. After a leisurely breakfast, I made my way to the cruise terminal. The massive ship gleamed white against the blue sky, festive holiday decorations adorning its exterior despite the tropical setting. Christmas music played softly through the terminal as I checked in and received my room key. "First time cruising during the holidays?" the friendly staff member asked, noting my wide-eyed expression. "First time doing anything but hosting during the holidays," I replied with a smile. My cabin exceeded all expectations. The balcony suite Amanda and Thomas had upgraded me to featured a spacious sitting area, a luxurious bathroom, and most importantly, a private veranda overlooking the ocean. A small decorated Christmas tree sat on the desk, alongside a welcome basket and a note from the captain wishing me happy holidays. I unpacked slowly, placing my clothes in drawers and hanging my evening attire in the closet. There was something freeing about arranging only my own belongings, not having to make space for guests or organize around others' needs. As the ship prepared to sail, I made my way to the top deck for the departure celebration. Hundreds of passengers gathered, many wearing festive holiday attire despite the warm weather. I struck up a conversation with a couple celebrating their 40th anniversary and a woman traveling solo after losing her husband earlier that year. Already I was forming connections without the pressure of being the host. That evening, I enjoyed a gourmet dinner at a table with other solo travelers, exchanging stories and laughter. No one expected me to refill their drinks or clear their plates. I was simply a participant, not the provider, and the novelty of this position felt liberating. Back in my cabin, I found a voice message from Thomas. I called him back immediately, and his face appeared on my tablet screen, the rental house visible behind him. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to make sure you got on board okay. How's the cruise so far?" "It's wonderful," I said truthfully. "The ship is beautifully decorated, and I've already met some lovely people." His relief was visible. "Good. I was worried you might be lonely." "Not at all," I assured him. "How are the preparations going there?" Thomas panned the camera around to show me the kitchen where organized chaos reigned. Amanda was rolling out pie crust while her sister Brittany chopped vegetables. Their mother Janet supervised the gravy making, and even Gerald was visible basting what appeared to be a perfectly browned turkey. "We followed your timeline exactly," Thomas said proudly. "Everything's on schedule for tomorrow's dinner." "It looks perfect," I said, feeling an unexpected mixture of emotions, pride, nostalgia, and yes, a tiny twinge of what might have been regret. Not regret for my decision, but perhaps for all the years I hadn't asked for help, hadn't taught these skills, hadn't allowed others to share the burden and joy of creation. "We miss you," Thomas admitted quietly, after moving to a quieter corner of the house. "But I think this has been good for us. I never realized how much work goes into these gatherings." "That's all I wanted," I told him. "For you to see the invisible labor, and maybe to see me not just as your mother or the holiday host, but as Sylvia, a person with my own needs and desires." He nodded solemnly. "I see you now, Mom, and I'm sorry it took this for me to really understand." We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye, promising to connect again on Christmas Day. After hanging up, I stepped out onto my balcony, watching the moonlight shimmer on the dark water. For the first time in decades, I felt the approaching holiday bringing peace rather than stress. Christmas Eve on the ship was a celebration unlike any I had experienced before. The crew had transformed the main atrium into a winter wonderland, with garlands and lights draped from every railing. A massive tree rose through the center, decorated with ornaments representing all the ports of call the ship visited throughout the year. I attended a special holiday concert in the theater, where performers sang carols from around the world. Later I joined a midnight buffet, where ice sculptures and chocolate fountains created a feast for both eyes and palate. What struck me most was the joy I felt simply being present, without responsibility for others' experiences. I could appreciate the beautiful decorations without having created them, enjoy the delicious food without having cooked it, and absorb the festive atmosphere without worrying whether everyone else was having a good time. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in any December for as long as I could remember. Christmas morning arrived with brilliant sunshine streaming through my balcony doors. Instead of waking before dawn to put a turkey in the oven, I lingered in bed, savoring the quiet and the gentle rocking of the ship. When I finally rose, I dressed in a flowing sundress, a far cry from the practical holiday attire I typically wore for cooking and hosting, and made my way to a special Christmas brunch. The dining room was filled with families and couples, all dressed in their best, many wearing whimsical Santa hats despite the tropical heat. At my table, I met a grandmother from Arizona who had brought her entire family of 15 on the cruise. After 40 years of cooking Christmas dinner, she confided, "I told them this was my retirement gift to myself. Now we start a new tradition." I smiled in recognition of a kindred spirit. "This is my first year not hosting too. My son and his wife are taking over." "Brave woman," she laughed. "I don't think my children would know where to begin." "Mine didn't either," I admitted, "but they're learning." After brunch, I found a quiet spot on deck to make my scheduled video call with the family in Chicago. When Thomas connected, I was greeted by a chorus of "Merry Christmas" as the camera panned around the living room of the rental house where everyone was gathered. The scene was chaotic and joyful. Children played with new toys on the floor. Adults balanced plates of food on their laps. The tree decorated with the ornaments I had lent them glittered in the background. "We just finished dinner," Thomas explained, looking both exhausted and exhilarated. "Everything turned out great, though we had a small crisis with the stuffing." "The texture wasn't quite right," Amanda chimed in. "But we figured it out." One by one, family members took turns with the phone showing me their Christmas celebrations and asking about my cruise. Even Amanda's grandmother, whom I had never met, wanted to speak with me. "So you're the one who trained Thomas to cook," she said approvingly. "He did a fine job with that turkey." When it was Janet's turn, she moved to a quiet corner to speak privately. "Sylvia, I can't thank you enough. This has been a revelation for all of us, especially our children. They never understood the work that goes into these gatherings." "I'm just glad it all came together," I replied. "More than that," Janet insisted. "It's changing how we think about family responsibilities. Gerald actually learned how to make gravy today." She laughed. 30 years of marriage, and this is the first holiday meal where he's done more than carve the meat and pour drinks. After saying goodbye to everyone, I spent the rest of Christmas Day enjoying the ship's activities. I joined a cookie decorating class, watched It's a Wonderful Life under the stars on the pool deck, and ended the evening with a gourmet dinner and a holiday show. As I returned to my cabin that night, I found a small package outside my door, a gift from the couple I had met on embarkation day. Inside was a handmade ornament with the ship's name and the date, along with a note, "To new friends and new traditions." I placed it carefully on the small Christmas tree in my room, a tangible reminder that connections and celebrations could take new forms while still holding meaning. The remainder of the cruise passed in a blur of sunshine shore excursions and newfound friendships. I explored ancient ruins in Mexico, swam in crystal-clear Caribbean waters, and danced under the stars at the New Year's Eve celebration. Each day brought new experiences and a growing sense of confidence in my decision to prioritize my own joy. When I finally returned home in early January, my house felt different, still filled with memories, but somehow lighter, as if the burden of obligation had been lifted from its walls. A package waited on my porch, delivered the day before. Inside was a photo album Thomas and Amanda had created, documenting their Christmas hosting experience. Page after page showed the preparation, the celebration, and candid moments of family joy. The final page held a note. "Mom, thank you for teaching us that traditions can evolve while still honoring what matters most, family love and shared joy. This Christmas taught us so much about appreciation, both for the holiday and for you. We're already planning next year's gathering, and while we hope you'll join us as our honored guest, we'll understand if you choose to cruise again. Love always, Thomas and Amanda." Tears filled my eyes as I traced their words with my fingertip. This was the greatest gift, not just their understanding, but their growth. My boundary had not destroyed our family traditions. It had transformed them into something more equitable, more conscious, and ultimately more sustainable. The following Christmas, I did join them at another rental house near Chicago. But this time, I came as a guest, not as the primary host. I helped where needed, but also relaxed and enjoyed watching the next generation carry forward the best of our traditions while creating new ones. As for the Christmas after that, well, Thomas and Amanda joined me on a holiday cruise through the Panama Canal. After all, some new traditions are worth repeating. Looking back on that pivotal Christmas now 3 years later, I can see how that one decision rippled through our family in ways I never anticipated. What began as a simple act of self-preservation transformed our family dynamics permanently, and I believe for the better. The journey from guilt to self-acceptance wasn't linear. Even on the cruise, I experienced moments of doubt, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. There were times I found myself checking my phone compulsively for messages from Thomas, worried about kitchen disasters or family tensions erupting without my mediation. But those concerns gradually faded as I witnessed my son and daughter-in-law rise to the challenge. They didn't just survive that Christmas, they thrived, discovering capabilities they hadn't known they possessed, and creating their own meaningful traditions in the process. Thomas has become quite the holiday chef, developing his own signature dishes alongside the family recipes I passed down. Amanda has embraced the role of coordinator, managing the logistics of bringing everyone together with an efficiency I admire. Most importantly, they've established a rotation system where hosting duties are shared among various family members, ensuring no one person bears the entire burden. Last year it was Amanda's sister Brittany and her husband who hosted in their new home in Wisconsin. Next year, Janet and Gerald have volunteered their larger house in Michigan. The holiday has become a truly collaborative effort, with everyone contributing their strengths. My relationship with Thomas has deepened in ways I couldn't have imagined. That difficult conversation when I finally set a boundary became a turning point for us. He sees me differently now, not just as his mother, but as Sylvia, a woman with her own needs, desires, and life beyond my role in his world. We talk more openly about expectations and responsibilities. He asks for help when he needs it, but never assumes I'll drop everything to provide it. The balance between us feels healthier, more equal despite our parent-child relationship. With Amanda, too, something shifted. What had been a cordial but somewhat distant connection has evolved into genuine friendship. She confided in me recently that watching me set boundaries inspired her to do the same in other relationships in her life. I always thought being a good daughter, wife, or eventually mother meant saying yes to everything, she told me over coffee during her last visit. Seeing you claim space for yourself showed me another way. Janet and I have become unlikely allies and friends. We regularly exchange emails about our travels and occasionally meet halfway between our homes for weekend getaways. Last summer, we even took a cooking class together in New York City, a far cry from the tension that once characterized our relationship when it centered solely around holiday hosting. As for me, I've embraced this new chapter wholeheartedly. I've taken watercolor classes, joined a book club that actually discusses the books, and traveled to places I'd only dreamed about during my teaching years. Last spring, I spent a month in Italy, something the old Sylvia tethered to everyone else's expectations would never have done. Some might see my story as simply about a holiday rebellion, but it was never really about Christmas itself. It was about recognizing my own worth after decades of putting others first. It was about teaching my son through example rather than words that women are not default caregivers, whose time and energy matter less than men's. It was about showing myself that saying no doesn't make me selfish or uncaring, it makes me human. The most beautiful outcome has been watching how this ripple effect has touched even the youngest members of our family. Amanda's niece, now 12, recently told her mother she wanted to learn to cook the family stuffing recipe like Thomas does. Not like Grandma does, or like Aunt Sylvia does, but like Thomas, a man participating fully in family care work. This is perhaps the legacy I'm most proud of, not the perfectly roasted turkeys or meticulously decorated trees of Christmases past, but this shift in how our family sees domestic labor and caregiving. The change didn't come from lectures or arguments, but from one simple, difficult act, stepping away and allowing others to step up. If you're watching this and feeling the weight of unappreciated family labor on your shoulders, I hope my story gives you permission to examine those traditions that may no longer serve you. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for sustainable relationships. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is the opportunity to develop their own capabilities in your absence. My son said, "It's just 12 people." I smiled and replied, "Perfect, I'm traveling, you handle it, I'm not your maid." In that moment, I couldn't have imagined how those words would transform not just one Christmas, but our entire family dynamic for years to come. Life is too short to spend it fulfilling obligations that drain rather than nourish you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is step aside and make space for new possibilities for yourself and for those you love. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with family during the holidays? How did it turn out? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating family dynamics and finding your voice. Thank you for listening, and remember, traditions should serve people, not the other way around. Wishing you holidays filled with joy, whether you're hosting, traveling, or finding your own unique way to celebrate.